Let's talk about how HIPAA is implemented in a small office, particularly small doctor's offices, but this actually could be a little broader if you're involved in insurance, if you're involved in the legal field, and even in some cases accounting fields, you actually may have exposure to patient records as well. And if you are exposed to those patient records, then you actually are under HIPAA regulations also. So if you're a small practice of whatever sort, most likely a doctor's office, how do you implement HIPAA? Well, a lot of you say, well, hey, we've been implementing HIPAA since the 90s, we know all about it. What you've been implementing is the privacy policy of HIPAA, and there's two sections to it. One is privacy, the other is the security section. And that's really where consultants in IT industry come into play, because the security side of HIPAA is a little bit more complicated to implement than what you might be able to do internally. In fact, I've had an expert tell me that any small practice that's trying to do HIPAA security without the help of an outside contractor is not compliant. He's just that confident that there's no way that you could actually comply with the rules if you don't have somebody that has some experience and some background to be able to help you with that. So why is it so complicated? Well, first of all, it does involve IT technology, and it involves how do we make sure that we protect these electronic records, that you're gathering lots and lots of statistical information. Now, first off, let me just kind of stop and say, why is this even a problem? A lot of you are thinking, nobody's going to ever break into my office, nobody's ever going to try to get this information, none of it means anything to anybody but us. But you're absolutely not right. I mean, it is an incredibly valuable information, particularly in the scope of creating false identities. Identity theft is one of the biggest problems that we face in our country. In fact, we face in the world. It's no longer just a hobbyist. It's no longer just small-time crooks that are involved. It's large criminal organizations, very sophisticated organized crime syndicates that are involved in doing this. And they're very much interested in getting as much demographic information about people as possible so that they can create these false identities. That's why it's so important to keep somebody's patient information confidential. Now, outside of that too, there's a lot of information in there that could hurt people's reputations if it was put out by somebody that was upset with them. For instance, if somebody was angry with someone and they got a hold of patient records that maybe exposed something about their life that really needed to be kept secret, that could be a really big problem. But what you need to be focused on as a small practice provider of either healthcare or related healthcare products, services, is the fact that there is a huge penalty that could be weighed against you, upwards of $1.2 million. And we see this. I mean, on small practices, it's not uncommon. Somebody didn't have a firewall up to date and got fined $400,000 because it was involved in a breach. What a breach is when somebody gets access to information that they shouldn't have access to. That could be as little as one record, it could be as many as thousands and thousands of records. But even if one record is exposed to somebody that it's not supposed to be exposed to, you're supposed to report that. And once you report it, you can almost guarantee that you're going to have an audit. And once you have an audit, you can almost guarantee that they're going to find something wrong. HIPAA was designed very generally with its language. It's meant to be able to be adapted from a small organization to a large organization, and that's why they used very general language. That was the goal anyways. The problem is that in the implementation of doing an audit or doing a review is that because of that vagueness of language, people really are subject to their own opinions as to what should apply at what level. And just because you think it shouldn't apply doesn't mean that the auditor might. You really need somebody that has experience. For instance, Blough Tech invested a considerable amount of time and amount of money in becoming a security practice company. We're very focused on this. We achieved something called the CompTIA Security Trust Mark. We were one of the first 50 companies in the country to be able to get this honor. And it means that not only do we follow best practices for security internally ourselves, but we're extremely familiar with security best practices and how it can be implemented, particularly in the small business marketplace. And particularly as it relates to how it would be done in small doctor's offices, dentist office, optometrist, you get the idea. It's incredibly important that you follow certain principles, and you're not going to know those things unless somebody is helping you and coaching you through that process. And that's really where we come into play. We have a lot of technology that we just use to handle this stuff for you, and then we have policies and procedure guides that we can work with you to implement so that you fulfill the paper requirements that are also necessary for meeting these obligations. If you are confused by HIPAA, and you probably are because it can be very, very confusing, you just need somebody to help you unwind that, to be able to make sense out of it. That's what we're here for. We'll be glad to help. All you got to do is give us a call.